What's up guys, and welcome to the Galaxy Garage. And today I'm going to be showing you guys how I took a regular camping light and turned it into a Kyber crystal chamber.
Alright guys, here we go. We're going to start disassembling this camping light. Pretty easy to take apart, and that center LED light right there is what I'm trying to take out. And I'm putting a crystal right in the center there, so I got to remove that. And if you're going to keep the lamp just the way it is, then you don't have to go through this whole process that I'm going through. But it's pretty quick on disassembling. It's one center rod, whole piece comes apart, battery pack off the bottom, 4 screws. That's it. Now off to everybody's favorite part, which is going to be the sanding. And you want to make sure to put a fine tooth on this, especially with this type of plastic. Without having an etch on there, that paint will never stick to this plastic. So, you know, it's tedious work, but, you know, it's got to be done, especially if you're wanting to paint one of these. And here I'm taking my Dremel tool, and I'm going to put my sanding wheel on, and there's 4 tabs that come on these that the hanging wire is on, so I want to sand those off, get them nice and smooth, and then I'll hit that with that 150 sandpaper as soon as I get all these off and down and get it cleaned up. Alright, now we're down to my favorite part. This is my wood glue, fine dirt, and water. So this mixture here will be spread on kind of like you would do toothpaste, but with this right here, once you apply heat to it, it creates bubbles. And once you put your finished paint on top of this and you go and peel those bubbles off, it looks like chipped paint. I love this technique here. And you can put your silver color, your gunmetal color, whatever you want underneath this, and it will show through after you peel these bubbles off. And you can see these bubbles here. And I'll do this all over this entire piece. I think it's a great look. You can have that rust coming through those bubbles as you peel them off. That's my sensor light going off on me. And you can rub this on there as much as you want, as heavy as you want to get larger bubbles, as small as you want to get smaller bubbles. You can put it on light the way I'm doing there in the center, and no bubbles, and just basically applying dirt. Here I find a little mistake that I did, and I thought I'd add it in this video to show you guys the importance of sanding. I didn't sand the grooves, and this is what happens. It beads up, will not stick no matter what you do. So I'll tell you no once, and then I'll tell you no again. I'll grab our rag, clean this off, grab that 150 sandpaper, and back at the sanding. So once all that's done, we'll go ahead and put it back in that groove, and you can see it just sticks. That's what we're looking for. And again, you can just add as heavy as you want, as light as you want. I go light in the centers just so I can get the dirt to stick to there. This part's so satisfying. You can just see those bubbles pop up. When you go to rip that off, I mean, it looks like chipped paint. So here we are adding orange paint over the top of all my glue. And I'm using a fine fan brush, and I'm using a latex paint. I like to use spray rattle cans, but in this case I had this orange paint, and it's what I had on hand. So I like the latex as well. I can use it with water and keep it wet and thinned, and it works great. And with a fine fan brush, you just add light coats. Don't go heavy with it. Don't try to cover your piece in one coat. I believe these 3 pieces here took about 3 or 4 coats before I finally got the coverage that I needed on it. If you try to brush on heavy, you'll just leave heavy brush strokes, and you don't want that. There we go, hit that top. Now we're on to the assembly of the crystal. So this part takes a little while. I mean, you got to make sure everything fits perfect. Everything lines up. And since the fact that I'm adding a crystal down the middle, I have 2 threaded rods that you see there on the table. And I'm lining up where I want those rods to go. They have to go on both sides of this plate down at the bottom. You can see me there marking it before I drill my holes and making sure everything's lined up. Everything's marked up. I have a center punch. You don't need a center punch. You can use anything that has a sharp edge to it just to kind of put a tooth so your drill bit will catch on to. And then we drill our holes. You can see me run off there. I go ahead and grab a chamfer bit, and I'm kind of just cleaning the holes up as I'm going. So I'm running my rod through, making sure that it's level as I'm going through and marking the inside and drilling the hole for the top piece. I'm going to add my all threads. And I'm just using a hex nut on top and bottom. And I painted them black. I wanted them to kind of almost disappear when the container's open. And I also painted each one of the plates, the top and bottom plate, they came chrome, and I painted those black as well. That was just so I don't get any reflection or light bouncing off of the chrome, and all the light is focused into the crystal. So we're changing the drill bit out, and we're drilling a small pilot hole, and this is going to be for the springed copper wire that I have that's going to slip over those all threads, and I'll feed that through there. And this is to run my power from my battery pack down at the bottom to the LED light that I'm putting on top. Now disassemble everything. We'll start lining up for the crystal as soon as I get this cleaned up. Now we're ready for the crystal. So here's the crystal. I'm going to drop it in the center here. And it doesn't stay straight up and down, right? I have to maneuver it in a way to get it to stand straight up and down. And I struggled a little bit with it. It's a little hard kind of sticking a screwdriver through the hole, shifting the crystal over so it can stand straight up. And once I get it, you know, standing straight up, I'll drop a little glue in there. It was a little bit tedious. It was kind of hard to get the crystal to stand exactly where I wanted it. It's trying to put it right on that hole that's in the top and making sure the light doesn't leak around it. And the light is focused directly onto the crystal. Here I am trying to get the glue out of the bottle and realize that I can't get it out. The bottle glued shut, so there you go, gave it a good squeeze, got it out. Put a small drop in there. Hit it with a little bit of kick. Another drop. Just enough to hold the crystal, and there it is. So I'll drop some more glue all the way around just so it doesn't fall off. I'll set that off to the side, let it dry. Okay, now it's time for the final assembly. Go ahead and clean that chamber out. And here I'm adding that spring copper wire over my all thread. That's going to supply the power that I need to the top light. Then I'm going to drop a little bit of super glue down at the bottom of the all thread just to hold them in place so they're not sliding back out on me, because it kept sliding out. And this will be the final resting spot for my crystals. So once this is assembled, it'll never come back apart. Lining everything up. It's my top piece, trying to feed the little small copper wires through the hole. Get my first hex nut on there. Second hex nut, and then we are done with having this cylinder assembled, closed with ease. You know, taking your time on making sure that when you drill your holes, oh man, it helps at the end. There are my LEDs. I'm going with a green LED with this, and I'm cutting off the tip of the LED. It's not gonna mess with the light coming out of the LED, but I cut it off because I didn't have the room for the size of the LED with the battery box that goes in there, so I had to cut it down. So you can cut the tip of the LEDs off as long as you don't go too far and hit the diode on that. So here I am stripping a black and red cord. And this is going to be wired to the spring copper wire that's feeding through the bottom there. That's going to supply the power for the top light. And I hope nobody says anything about me not having a fan. You don't see the fan. The fan is off to the side, and it is blowing the smoke out of my face. So I know this. Nobody wants to be breathing in any solder smoke. It's not good for you. So, but I do have a fan that's blowing right on me, so none of the smoke is coming towards me. It's just something about soldering that I love. So get those nice and twisted. That's a little flux that I'm putting on there. Adding some solder to the tip of my solder pin. Test it out. Put some batteries. There's your light. And there's a pressure switch on the side of this that when the light is closed, it hits that pressure switch and turns the light off. Add the 4 screws down onto the top light. So this one here I don't have to cut. I had enough clearance to just drop this light right in there, put a little kick to hold it so it doesn't go anywhere. And I'm just testing to make sure that when I do solder, I'm soldering this to the right side. Cut those leads down. Don't need them as long as they are right now. There we go. Working light. All right, now we're on to my favorite part. Is the weathering. In my eyes, you just cannot go wrong with weathering. You know, and I like heavy weathering on some of my stuff. You know, especially this stuff right here that I'm doing. It's just, I love to put heavy weathering. Here's that glue. This is where I'm going to show you. You can see that paint, how it's chipped up. And I'm just using my fingers to pinch that bubble off of there. You can see how it just leaves that chip look. And you can use whatever you want. I mean, you can use a putty knife. You can use a screwdriver to peel them off. I use a small needle nose pliers that I have. But the finished result with that chip paint, and it just, I love the way it looks. So here we go with my small needle nose pliers that I have, and I work all 3 pieces, tearing as much paint as I want off, leaving some bubbles in there. Once you get to the weathering of this, I mean, it just leaves such a great effect on it. I love the way it looks. And there's plenty of techniques on YouTube on how to apply it, and you know how to really do it. I saw one YouTuber use a steel brush to remove these bubbles. So yeah, it's a great effect. We're just using a little sandpaper to knock off the rough dirt that's on there. Some of it got a little heavy. I'll probably skip through this and then get to my weathering. There we go. And again, I use latex black paint. You can see my spray bottle. I use a lot of water to keep it wet, not allowing it to dry. Putting it heavy down below where I believe like the grease and grime would settle in, and trying to fill those cracks in, and using that spray bottle. Just going through each piece, doing the same thing over and over, and I'll do each piece several times. I won't show it on this video because it does get a little tedious. I don't ever worry about the paint getting on my hands. I think if a little bit of paint gets on my hands, it's fine. It just adds to the weathering for me, and I like the effect. So if you're ever doing this, I mean, don't worry about trying to keep your hands clean, especially if you're going heavy. Now, if you're going a different route, then yeah, I understand. But with something like this, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to have a couple of fingerprints on there. Again, adding that water. If you're using latex paint, you know, just keep adding that water. Don't let it dry on you, because then it's really hard to get off with that latex. This is always satisfying for me. I always love doing the weathering on a piece. And now I'm mixing some black and some orange to kind of get that brown color. That rust is what I'm looking for. And here I go with a small brush, and I'm going to go inside of each one of those bubbles that I just peeled off, and I'm adding that rust in there. And as I'm adding them, I'm adding just dabs of orange to give that rust look. I'll put the brown in, and I'll come back with a little bit of orange and kind of dab it on there as much as possible. I don't show in this video, but as I'm adding that rust color paint inside of each one of these chipped peels that I did, I do add a lot of water in there to kind of let that paint run down and let that rust look like it's just bleeding out of each one of those chipped paint areas that I have on there. And this is where I have to apologize, guys. This is the proof of the fan. Didn't realize that I had the fan blowing so hard that it was hitting my camera, and it got all of this vibration. And I've done everything that I possibly could think of to get this to stabilize, and I can't. And the clip was just ruined from it shaking so hard, and I didn't realize that it was doing it. So I get through a little bit here, and I decided, like, hey, I gotta stop. It was too bad. So, you know, rookie mistake. All right, with that being said, I will go ahead and throw up some final results, and I hope you guys like it. I'll give you a little walkthrough. So there's that chip paint up there in the corner. If you see that, that's just, I love the way that looks. You know, I was super excited how all 4 of these pieces came out. That crystal just pops under that green light. Love the way these pieces came out. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed my first video here with the Galaxy Garage, and if you did, hit that like button, subscribe, leave me a comment down below, and like we do here in the garage, just build something.